This story just might change your life. The amazingly simple secret on how you could get anyone to fall in love with you almost instantly. You hear that? The amazingly simple secret on how you could get anyone to fall in love with you almost instantly. I'm Dr. Rob Gilbert. This story has changed lives. How do I know that? I've been telling this story on my hotline for over 20 years, and people tell me it's changed their life. And at the end, you'll learn the 3 magic words. Once upon a time, there was a young woman who had 2 boyfriends. One was named Bill and one was named Charlie. And she was going out with them for almost 2 years. And Bill knew there was somebody else in her life but didn't know who Charlie was. And Charlie knew there was somebody else in her life but didn't know who Bill was. But this woman had 2 boyfriends. She was having the time of her life, and she knew eventually she would get married, but she was in no rush. Well, one Friday night, Bill picked her up and they went out to a really nice restaurant, and right before dessert, he took out a beautiful black jewelry box, proposed marriage, and showed her this beautiful engagement ring. And the woman's stunned. And she didn't want to say yes, she didn't want to say no, so she said, "Let me think about it." And Bill wants to spend the rest of his life with this woman, got really upset. They had this big argument, and he drove her home. And the woman was really upset too, until Saturday night when Charlie picked her up. And Charlie was usually pretty laid back. For some reason, this night was really nervous. And he took her to a really fancy restaurant, and they were having a really nice time. And right after dessert, he too took out a beautiful black jewelry box, proposed marriage, and showed her this gorgeous engagement ring. And the woman is stunned, you can imagine. And she didn't want to say yes, she didn't want to say no, so she said, "Let me think about it." And Charlie wants to spend the rest of his life with this woman. He gets really upset. They have this argument. He drives her home. And now within the last 24 hours, she went from 2 guys to no one. Now, the only person who could possibly help her out of this dilemma magically showed up in her apartment, her fairy godmother. And her fairy godmother said, "My dear, I've never seen you so upset. What's happening?" Well, she told her what happened with Bill, and she told her what happened with Charlie. She said, "You know, fairy godmother, do you think this might be a sign that maybe I should decide whom I should marry?" And the fairy godmother said, "Well, it just might be." She said, "Well, could you help me?" She said, "Of course." So, "Well, what should I do?" She said, "Well, after I leave, go over, get a notebook, and draw a line down the middle, and put Bill's name on one side and Charlie's name on the other side. And stare at the Bill side of the piece of paper until you figure out the one thing you love most about being with Bill, and write it down. Then stare at the Charlie side of the piece of paper until you figure out the one thing you love most about being with Charlie, and write it down. Then read what you wrote about Bill, read what you wrote about Charlie, take a big inhalation, hold your breath as long as you can, and as soon as you have to exhale, the name of the man whom you should marry will magically pop into your mind." And with that, the fairy godmother vanished. So this sounds too good to be true. What an easy way out of this problem. So she got her notebook, Bill, Charlie, but it wasn't that easy. It took her 10, 20, 30, it took her 40 minutes to figure out the one thing she loved most about being with Bill, and wrote it down. And it took her another 10, 20, 30, 40 minutes to figure out the one thing she loved most about being with Charlie, and wrote it down. Now the moment of truth. She read what she wrote about Bill, she read what she wrote about Charlie, took a big inhalation, and just as she exhaled, the name Charlie popped into her mind, and she knew that that was the right person for her. It was like a ton of weight, so it was taken off her shoulders. Well, she's just about to go back in bed with all of her beanie babies when who do you think showed up? The fairy godmother again. She said, "Oh, my dear, you look like your old self. Did my technique work?" And the young woman said, "It worked like a charm." And she said, "Did you decide whom you're going to marry?" She said, "Well, Charlie, of course. I should have known this a long time ago." And the fairy godmother said, "Well, just for my records, what did you decide that the one thing you love most about being with Bill is?" And the woman said, "You know, it wasn't that easy. It took me 40 minutes to realize that when I'm with Bill, I feel that he's the most wonderful person in the whole world." And the fairy godmother scratched her head and she said, I thought you were going to marry Charlie." She said, "Oh, I am." I said, "Well, what did you write about Charlie?" She said, "You know, fairy godmother, this wasn't so easy. It took me another 40 minutes to figure out the one thing I love most about being with Charlie." And the fairy godmother said, "Well, what is it?" I said, "Well, when I'm with Charlie, I feel like I'm the most wonderful person in the whole world." So the 3 magic words, whether you want to sell yourself romantically, or you're a salesperson, or anyway, the 3 magic words are, it's about others. It's about others. It's not about you, it's about them. So whether you want to attract the love of your life, You want to attract a business partner. You want to attract more money. Realize the way it happens, it's not about you. It's not what's in it for you. It's what's in it for them. It's about others. So I'm Dr. Rob Gilbert. Oh, I have another one. If you want to hear more, Success Hotline, 973-743-4690. Every single day I have a new message. Usually I change about 7:30 in the morning. I've only been doing it for more than 22 years, so I will probably be there tomorrow. Hope you could call. And thanks for watching this video. And thank you, Anthony.